to you this week from the California Institution for Women at Corona. California's state prison for women is in the rich San Gabriel Valley near the city of Corona, some 45 miles east of Los Angeles. It's a modern prison without walls, without bars, where the penal philosophy is an enlightened one. But to every woman here, it is no less a place of penal servitude. And in every room, behind each locked door, every prisoner hopes for and dreams of the day that may bring her freedom, the day of the parole hearing. In California, the Board of Trustees sets the definite sentences for female prisoners within the indeterminate periods imposed by law. They also determine what part may be served on parole. This is one of the panels in session today. Mrs. Edna Colbert Plummer, attorney. Miss Grace E. Barneberg, civic leader. And Mrs. Ann Humphreys, philanthropic leader. In the hands of these three women lies the fate of the prisoner about to appear before them. Number 56866. This is prisoner number 56866. She is 38 years old, is serving an indeterminate sentence of 6 months to 14 years for writing bad checks. She blames poverty for the crime that sent her to prison. The hearing day has arrived. What fixed sentence will it bring?
Bessie, how long have you been in the institution?
7 months.
7 months. What was the sentence given you?
6 months to 14 years.
6 months to 14 years, and what was your offense? What brought you here?
Issuing checks without sufficient funds.
Issuing checks without sufficient funds. Have you regrets now that you did?
I most certainly do.
Start on a career of that sort?
I most certainly, I can tell you, I think if I spent the rest of my life, I couldn't tell you how sorry and how ashamed I am to be sitting here before you.
Was it a need, an urgent need behind that act?
Well, Miss Barneberg, I have never had a good financial background.
Well, now, what do you mean by good? That could mean almost anything.
My husband never really worked much. First, he's a victim of polio, and for some reason or other, if he had a job, he worked well, but he never had the initiative to get his own job. Then when he started to work, he got sick. He had tuberculosis. He was in a sanatorium for 2 years.
This was after polio now?
Yes.
Tell me something of your family background. Can they find an excuse back there, any place,
well,
for your act?
I don't know how to explain that. I mean, my family background, perhaps I was a very, very shy, inhibited child. I was brought up in a foster home. But I mean, by foster parents who were very good to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I have an education, regardless of what complexes I may have had. I mean, I should know better. And I hope
why foster parents now?
My parents were separated.
I see.
And then when they did go together again when I was 4 years old, and my mother did take me home, apparently, this is all from what I've been told, I don't remember, they said that I didn't get along at home. My mother, I guess, wasn't adjusted to me, and I wasn't adjusted to her.
Mm-hmm.
See, the foster parents I lived with were older people, more of a motherly type, whereas my mother was a younger woman, and whereas mother, that was the foster woman that I lived with, her home centered around the children and her house. My mother maybe would have a charge account at the corner restaurant for the children, for my brother and me to have our lunch. And apparently, from what they've told me, I would fight with my mother about those things. So finally, my mother brought me back to my foster parents, and I lived with them until I was 11. When Daddy died, that was my foster father.
Mm-hmm.
And then her only daughter, Viola, got married. I came home.
I see. Then you lived with your mother thereafter?
Yes.
How'd you get on?
Not too well, I guess. My mother did things that I didn't like.
And for instance, what? We're being very frank and honest, not hurting anybody.
She browbeated my father a whole lot, I think. And my father is an old-fashioned, good man.
Mm-hmm.
And he, too, probably would have just preferred his home and his children and no other recreations. Whereas my mother, to her, home was a place to make a meal and get out as fast as she could for her evening's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she's a very, very sick woman today, very sick. And she's taken this very, very badly. And my father, too, is a very sick man. I just hope I live to see her.
How did you commit your own crime? Was there anything unusual or just the usual thing? Were you tricky about it or were you out in the open with it?
I've never written a check.
Did your husband know about it?
My husband didn't know when I did them, but he did know later.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never written a check with any name other than my own or my... I never really meant, as I say, it sounds so stupid now, really. But any time I'd write a check, I would endorse it with my own, even if I may have signed a fictitious name on the front. I would endorse it with my own name and address. It was my way of borrowing money for a few days. And then when the check was dishonored at the bank and the person who had deposited the check would come to my house, I'd make restitution.
Mm-hmm.
I've never used any name but my own.
Mm-hmm. What period of time has this covered? About how many years have you been doing this?
Well,
as I figured out, was about a
I've had some trouble.
I want to see where arithmetic's the same.
I had some trouble in 43, I believe it was, and then I was all right until 50 or 51.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it hovers
after
around how many years?
Well, all told,
yeah.
I guess about 12.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't like to say it.
About 12 years. I knew you wouldn't want to admit that. And I was rather startled to add it up and find that there was that many.
As I say, there's been a period of 6 or 7 years where I was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I never, it looked so bad, and I've never really intended to hurt anyone.
Well, you probably got tobogganing and you couldn't stop. There was no place to stop.
That's what happens.
You went along until the
it's a vicious cycle, and I don't know, once you start on it, it seems to snowball until, I don't know.
What are you doing in the institution now that's given you the most good? That's built you up to face the future successfully?
This honest merit system. I mean, there isn't any particular work I've done here that's built me up. This honor merit system has taken terrific hold of me.
It has?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, maybe because I'm so anxious to get straight with myself, and this seems to be an example to me that a way of life in here could be the same way of life outside.
Absolutely, it could. Mm-hmm. What else beside the honor merit system? I'm glad no other girl has ever mentioned that.
Well,
that the honor merit system was helpful to you.
There hasn't been anybody that I've come in contact with in this place that's ever looked at me with contempt, which is important, because when you come in here you feel as if you're very defeated, your morale is very low, and when they give you a nice pleasant hello and don't look at you well, as if you're a leper or an untouchable, all of a sudden you feel that you have to live up to that person's concept of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you learning to smile too?
Yes.
Greet people pleasantly?
Yes.
Day by day?
Yes.
Well, that's the way to go through it.
Yes.
All right. Have you had any vocational training in here whatsoever? Has anything appealed to you that would help you on the outside?
Well, I've always been an office worker, and that's where I would like to work.
Well, I think that's all. Is there any question from the board?
No, I have no questions, Grace.
How about you, Miss Humphries?
Yes, Bessie, you admitted that you had been issuing checks without sufficient funds for more than 10 years.
Well, excuse me. I can't, it goes back more than 10 years, but I mean, it's been for periods that I wouldn't, and then maybe a month might happen that that I did. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been a constant go-round.
But in your history, it shows that you were granted probation on 2 different occasions in the state of New York.
Yes.
Now, wouldn't you have gained a lesson out of that probation that would have stopped you continuing to write checks?
Maybe I needed this to really get away from everything and really think and take stock of myself.
Well, you certainly do, and you're in the right place undoubtedly, and you've been thinking through the situation and have arrived. Your thinking is excellent. However, I would like to ask you a question pertaining to the gambling house that you maintain. Now, for your losses, you wrote checks?
No, it didn't work that way, and I didn't maintain the gambling house. this is what happened, and I think that this was really more of a downfall for me than anything else. When my husband got sick, Anita, that's my children, was 3.5, and Kenny was a baby. And I wanted to go to work. I've always been able to hold a good job, and I have a pretty good work record. My mother was afraid that she wouldn't be able to take care of the children. This was before she became ill. They were poor eaters, and the Jewish people seemed to put so much emphasis on food for some reason or other. And she says to me, Bessie, she says, I know a woman that runs a poker games. If you'll let her use your house, she'll pay you for the house, and meanwhile, you can be home and take care of your own children. So, I did.
You'll step out.
Thank you.
What will the prison term be? Here is the sentence.
What do you think about this case? How much postponement should be given?
I think that since she has been writing checks for a long period of time, and in view of the fact that she had been given probation in the state of New York on 2 different occasions, violated her probation, that that should go into our thinking in setting the sentence. I'll make a motion for 7 years and a 20 months postponement.
I'd go for that.
You think
Second
that's fair?
motion.
I think that's
Those
fair.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion is carried.
And now the prisoner will hear the sentence.
Bessie, we've considered your case, and the parole officers also, and they have given you a sentence of 7 years with a 20 months postponement.
Thank you.
At the end of 20 months, you come before us for parole consideration. You understand that?
Yes.
Now make the most of the 20 months, won't you?
Thank you.
Aye.
Sentence fixed at 7 years. In a moment, we take you to the second hearing on parole.